and I knit 2 arms, like no problem. I mean, no problem, it took me forever. Hi, welcome back to my channel, Mrs. Shank. If you're new here, that's me, my name's May, and this is episode 3 of Knit With Me, a weekly knitting podcast / video series I'm putting out every Monday where I share all my crafty stuff from the week before. Usually it's knitting. This week it's entirely knitting, but I also love to cross stitch and sew and needle felt. I just like trying out new crafty things. So this lighting is awful, I know. You're very welcome. It's been overcast and gray, and I've just been waiting for the sun to come out to film this, and it hasn't happened, so I'm just gonna do it now anyway. Got my knitty mug. This is from Starbucks. My friend Talia gave this to me 10 years ago or so, something like that. It's one of those things that made it out of storage, and it was like angels singing when it came out of the box. Like, I was so happy that it didn't get broken or lost. Anywho, this past week I caught a head cold that really slowed me down for most of the week, but I'll show you my progress and a little haul. So last week I showed you the yarn that I picked up from Unit for the Dream Sweater. It's the Loch Lomond Bio from BC Garn. It's 100% certified organic. I'm still learning about organic fibers, so this is new to me, but this yarn is GOTS certified, and that's pretty cool. I'll leave some links in the description. It's pretty neat. So this yarn is soft and it's tweedy, and I'm very excited to see how it blocks out. So I cast on late at night on the 18th. Also, I should back up a little here. My first sweater of the year, my first sweater ever. Actually, you know what? Let's back up even further. My first sweater ever was, I'm trying to remember, Talia and I tried to figure it out like a few weeks ago. My first sweater ever, I would have cast it on sometime between like the beginning of 2007 and like the end of 2010, because we remember like what house I cast on in. So sometime there, when I lived in that house, I did a knit along with my bestie Talia and my sister Nikki and a handful of other people. It's called the Corona. I'll put a picture over here so you can see what I'm talking about. Nikki and Talia finished their sweaters. I think the other gals in the knit along finished theirs as well. I, however, did not, and I'm now knitting a bottom-up sweater. This is a bottom-up sweater, and like as I started knitting this bottom-up, I'm like, oh, I've never knit a bottom-up sweater, but the only other sweater I've knit technically has been a bottom up, even though I didn't finish it. So this is knit up to the bust, where it has this, like you see, obviously like a split. And that split is for the hood because it's a hoodie. Obviously, not so obviously. I hope I pick a picture that's obvious. Anyway, it splits for the hood. And it's beautiful, and the detail along the split is tricky. And at the time, I was not a very experienced knitter. I'm very proud to say that I didn't have a lot of problems getting that done. Like, it worked out well. Pattern is written very well. Like, I managed to muddle through it, and it wasn't a big deal. Then, you go a few more rows. Now it's time to stop and work on the arms. So I stopped and I knit 2 arms, like no problem. I mean, no problem, it took me forever. But then when I attach those arms, that's where I ran into trouble, and why I think it's worth mentioning that ancient sweater that I did compared to this sweater that I'm working on now. So now I know that when you knit a bottom-up sweater, the armpit stitches stay like to the side. So I just have mine on scrap yarn. They stay on the scrap yarn. And then it's the rest, like the shoulder and then all the way around, everything that isn't the armpit goes onto your main circular needle to just tie it into the rest of the sweater. Hopefully seamlessly, right? And so I did that, and it worked out just fine in this sweater. So it's laughable to think of how I did it wrong the first time. And I can remember how I did it wrong the first time. And I can't even fathom how I managed to do it. But basically what I did was I knit, around to get to the arm, to get to the armpit. And then I would somehow attach like the shoulder part to where the armpit goes. And then not notice that's what I had done. First sweater ever, remember? And then I would knit along the back and then come to this side, and then you made the same mistake because I just did it the same. And then you don't notice you really made the mistake, or I did not, until I knit all the way across the front again and then realized like, oh, this is not going to work. Took it out, I had to go back, take this arm off, go back, take that arm off, try again, do it again somehow. Like, now it's laughable because I look back and I'm like, I totally attached 2 sleeves to this sweater without any, significant issues at all. Like, I know you go back after and deal with the armpits, but like, I can't believe I messed that up so bad. Now I really, really, really want to knit the Corona again because like, I could totally do that now. Like, I feel like, anyway, so technically this is my third sweater ever, but only my second sweater that will actually be completed. And it was knit bottom up. So anyway, I cast on late at night on the 18th. And so the first sweater that I did this year and the first sweater that I ever completed was a top down seamless sweater. This sweater is bottom up with the sleeves attached after. So when I cast on, it was for the sleeves. And at the end of last week's video, I showed my arm progress, and I was about 3/4 of the way through one arm by then ish. It took about 3 days, 3.5 days, maybe closer to 4 to knit those. And I had a lot of scratch cooking and baking happening at that time. So my time was quite divided when I was doing that. Anyway, so once I got the sleeves done, I cast on for the body, and that finally happened, I think, on the 22nd, and it was kind of slow going. So I'm using a brand new circular needle, and if you've ever used a brand new circular needle to knit a sweater, you know that cable is awful and windy, and it wasn't super fast. But once I got done the cuff on the 23rd, it really started flying, and then by the 26th, I was up to just before the color work on the yoke. So this is 11 days of progress on that sweater. And I will also say that since I'm actually filming this after the weekend, I can show you today, like as of today's actual progress, and it is late on Monday. So late on Monday's actual progress is up to here. It's so funny because Chris has been watching my top down sweater come alive last week, the past 2 weeks, and he's seen it like I can try it on and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And in this case, he's looking at it like, is this for a kid? Because it's so short, but of course this is just to here. Like this is like shoulder. So I still have quite a bit of this to knit. Although I think I did mention last week that the length of the sleeve seemed questionable to me. So this may end up being a sweater for my teenage daughter after all, which is fine because I mentioned this to her and I showed her the pattern and she really liked it. And so I thought like, well, I'm not going to rip it out now. We will just see what happens. We'll let the knitting decide who this sweater belongs to, if it's for me or Lena. And then I will let you know how that goes. My gauge was okay. Like my gauge wasn't super off when I did my swatch, but you know what? Yeah, I don't know. Last time I washed and dried my swatch, and this time I didn't. And the reason I didn't this time, well, I want to say the reason I didn't this time is because it's not a super wash. And so I thought like, well, I'm just going to not dry it anyway. Like I'll lay it flat to dry it. So it's not like it's going to change that much, but also because I was very eager to just jump in and get going, and it was one anyway. You know how that goes. Like raise your hand if you didn't do a proper swatch for every sweater you've ever made. Anywho, so this is where I am now. Kind of obsessed. It'll definitely be done this week. I'm really excited to see who it's going to be for. And I do intend to knit one for Nacho because a couple people have asked me if I'm going to knit one for Nacho because it's not super wash, right? And I was like, he can just wear it in the house. He can just wear it sometimes. It'll be fine. And that is literally all I worked on this week. I mean, actually, I think I made 3 Hexie Puffs on the subway this week back and forth to knit night, but otherwise, that's it. I didn't even start working on my Toronto cross stitch or anything else, but I did get some fabric and thread this week at the store during knit night for my 100 acts of sewing patterns, so I will show you the patterns first. Please hold, everything is right there actually on that table. Okay, so patterns first are both from 100 acts of sewing. I got dress 1 and skirt 1. Is that going to focus? Probably not. Anyway, those are patterns that I got. I love that they come in sizes from extra small to 4X so that I can make them for the girls and for myself, like from the same pattern. So my high schooler decided she wanted to have the skirt, and my middle schooler decided she wanted the dress, and of course I wanted both. So I'm just going to show you the fabric choices we went with. I actually Marco Polo'd them from the store so they could choose, so it was kind of hilarious. So this is the fabric that my middle schooler chose for her dress. She picked the check and stripe fabric. It's kind of a little more red in this light than it actually is. It's more like a deep red. Yeah. I'll actually show you a link on the unit website so you can get a better idea of the color. It's not quite as bright. This lamp is kind of washing it out. It's actually a lot darker than it appears. So this fabric is the red linen from Check and Stripe. And then she went with the same for the pockets, but it's a cream mint. And again, the color is the color is more blue, like it's showing up more blue. It's actually more of like a minty green. So they're both Check and Stripe. Bless you. Thank you. And they're both linen, which is kind of fancy for a middle schooler, but that's fine. I told her she could pick whatever she wanted, so that's what she picked. So for my version of this dress, I picked 100% cotton fabric with the red with the blue roses. It's from Tilda Fabrics from their old rose collection. All the fabrics in this collection are vintage inspired and I loved all of them, but I agonized over them, of course, until I landed on this one. It's called Raspberry Eliza, and I knew I wanted the pockets to be different, but I didn't want any other prints to compete with this one, and I also didn't want to go like with a solid color either, so I ended up choosing this light gray cotton with tiny white florals. It's from Nanny Eero, so that's my dress. And now the skirts. When I was in the store last weekend, I saw the new Dear Stella fabrics we got in, and they were all so fun, and a lot of them were in her favorite shade of blue, like this navy, and she's really into astronomy right now too, so I showed her all the new deep blue Dear Stella fabrics, and she loved this one with the stars and planets. It's 100% cotton from the Dear Stella Starships collection, and this print is called Night Sky Blue. I am really excited to see how this looks as a skirt. And the fabric that I picked for my skirt was also from the Dear Stella Starship collection, so it's also 100% cotton and in the same color family. This print is called Ebb and Flow. And you know what's funny, actually? My sister loves this fabric as well, so I wonder if there's enough left over to kind of do something cute, make her something cute. I also picked up some matching thread to these fabrics, and I'm really excited to get started on them next week. And I'm new to sewing, as I've said a million times, and it's fun because I always see people picking out their fabric and then taking their fabric to like the wall of, I almost dropped it on the floor, to the wall of thread to try to match their fabric colors perfectly, or as perfectly as they can get. And yeah, it was kind of fun to be able to do that because I never do that. Like, I'm sure normally I would have just used like a black or like any navy, but I did my best to really match it to the thread. And since my skirt fabric and Lena's skirt fabric are so close, you know, like pretty close, so I just went ahead and got the same. And then the same for Daphne and I, where like our reds are similar. See, it's still showing up much brighter than it really is. It's actually not quite, it's not that bright. I'll have to, I mean, you'll see when I do it in actual daytime lighting, because this is horrific lamp lighting, so the color is terrible. So I'm really excited to get started on these next week. I mean, technically this week. I'm actually kind of curious about the yardage instructions that are given from the patterns. Like, I'm new, as I keep saying, but it says if the fabric width is 44 inches or like between 44 and 60, that all sizes will require 2.5 yards for the skirts. And I forget exactly what was needed for the dresses, but it was equally odd. Like, it just seems like it's so much fabric. And even when we were at the store, like cutting it, my sister was like, this is a whole lot of fabric. So we'll see how much I have left over. I mean, I love all this fabric. And of course, I'd be happy to make Nacho little bandanas to match us. Also, I can make scrunchies and project bags, maybe like scrappy projects later down the line. I'm happy to have some left over, but I will let you know how that worked out when I get to them, like when I film for next week. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that there's only 1 week left in January, and last month in a Forest City Knit Girls video where they were talking about making 1 Christmas ornament a month to have 12 new ornaments a year, totally inspired me. They were actually talking about specific ornaments, these really pretty handmade birds, but I'm thinking about like needle felting. So my middle schooler and I took a Christmas ornament needle felting class back, I think it was in November, and we both love doing it so much. So I'm aiming to make 1 or 2 ornaments, or maybe even other decorations for like other holidays and stuff, like Valentine's Day stuff and other cute and simple like seasonal decorations. So this next week, I hope to felt a Christmas ornament. And after I finish my dream sweater and maybe a matching one for Nacho, I want to knit up some cute hearts to make into like a Valentine's Day garland. This video was a little all over the place. I'm honestly kind of torn between doing these videos like this and then doing them vlog style. The issue I keep running into, besides lighting, which happens in either case, is that doing like a debriefing video where I sit here and kind of talk about like all the knitting and crafting that happened throughout the week, I can make sure that I can like, you know, like go through each thing I wanted to mention, show you all the stuff that I did, maybe things I'm still working on, progress stuff, whatever. That doesn't always work well when I'm doing it vlog style, because vlog style, I'm just kind of showing you like the things I'm doing as I do them. And I guess I could probably do both of those things together, but I actually kind of tried that a few weeks ago, like prior to my very first video, and it didn't really work out that well, I guess. Like, I just felt like it looked weird, and I don't know. So I would just love your feedback on that if you have an opinion one way or the other. If you're making any of the projects that I'm making, I would love to see them too. So feel free to tag me on Instagram if you post about them there. I'm Mrs. May Shank over there. And if you're not really following me there, I post knitting progress pictures and recipes nearly every day, sometimes in my feed and sometimes just in my stories. So thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions about anything that I showed you this week, feel free to ask in the comments. You know, I always try to answer your questions if I can. And if you're new here, you may not know that I'm also putting out a similar weekly video to this one, but it's all about food. So if you like videos about knitting or food, actually I'm doing one as well about planning, basically like those three, like knitting, planning, and food. Anyway, if you like those types of videos, vlog style or debrief style, we'll figure out how I'm gonna do that. Subscribe to my channel for new updates. Thanks, guys. Bye.